Hey everyone, and welcome to another reading vlog. So in this reading vlog I am going to be reading one of these 4 books. So these are the 4 thrillers that I currently have out the library, and I thought it would be quite fun to do a try a chapter challenge where I read the first chapter of each of these books and then decide which one to continue with based on those first chapters. I did do a similar video to this last year but with fantasy books, and it was actually pretty successful from what I remember, because I'm pretty sure that the book that I read ended up being 5 stars. So hopefully we'll have similar success with this video. I feel like as well with thrillers there's more opportunity for me to be hooked from the first chapter, especially if that chapter ends on a cliffhanger. So yeah, it's going to be hopefully an interesting experiment. I am going to quickly run through the 4 books that I'm going to be choosing from. So first up we have Sleepless by Romy Haussmann. This, I believe, is about a woman who has just been released from prison, and one of her friends from her old life gets in touch to ask her for help to hide a body. Sounds really intriguing, and I have read another book by this author. I read Dear Child last year and I really enjoyed it, so that's book number 1. Next up we have Pretty Girls by Karin. So I've never read anything by Karin before, but I know that they're a very, very popular author, and this I think is about a woman whose older sister went missing 20 years ago. It was a mystery that was never solved and it tore her family apart, and now another girl has disappeared, and there's similarities to when the main character's sister went missing. I've heard that Karin Slaughter books are very graphic and they're quite gruesome and violent, so not sure what I'm going to think of this one. Next up we have The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. So Ruth Ware is actually one of my favourite thriller authors. I loved The Turn the Key, and then more recently I read The It Girl, which is her 2022 release, and love that too. I've also read One by One, which I didn't enjoy as much but I still did like, so I'm interested to read one of her backlist books and see how that compares. All I know about this is that it's about a woman who receives a letter saying that she's inherited a load of money from a grandma that isn't actually her grandma, but she decides to go along and try and con the family and inherit the money anyway. Finally we have Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. So this sounds kind of like a domestic thriller because it's about a woman who 5 years ago her boyfriend was revealed to be a serial killer. However, he ended up escaping custody and went on the run, and now it's 5 years later and bodies have started turning up killed in the same way as before, so she's convinced that he's back and he's out to get her. I have read one book by Jennifer Hillier before. I read Little Secrets a few years ago and actually quite enjoyed it, considering that it's a domestic thriller and I don't typically love domestic thrillers, so I'm interested in this one. Also it's quite short, so I'm hoping it'll be a quick read. So those are the 4 books that I'm going to be choosing from. Let me know in the comments if you have any guesses as to which I'm going to end up reading, but otherwise I will catch up with you once I've read the first chapter of the first book.
Another lazy afternoon, the clouds covered in grey, 3rd coffee of the day.
So I thought I would start with Sleepless by Romy Haussmann. I have read the first chapter, but the first chapter was literally 5 pages, so there's not really much I can talk about. I mean, I will say that I do like books, and I especially like thrillers that have short chapters, because I do find that that helps with the pacing. But yeah, not much really happened in the first chapter. We're basically following this main character, Nadia, who's on her way driving somewhere when she stops at this petrol station, and I couldn't work out whether she had a panic attack or whether she fainted, but she had this dream where she was drowning, and that's it. That's literally the first chapter. A little disappointed with this, I'm not gonna lie. The only aspect that vaguely intrigued me was the first page, which is basically a letter that I'm assuming was wrote by the main character chapter where they're writing to someone saying that they're going to die and that it's over and that he's won. That's the only thing that would probably propel me to carry on reading. But so far, this is at the bottom of the pile. I mean, it's also at the top because it's the first book that I've started, but I don't think this is going to be the one that I end up picking up unless the other books are worse than this. I mean, it's not really fair, is it, to judge a book based on the first chapter? I will probably still read this at some point, but this first chapter was just a little bit weak, in my opinion.
When I was a little child, I naturally would see magic in the world around me.
Okay, so I've just finished the first chapter of Jar of Hearts, and this wasn't what I was expecting based on the blurb. I don't know whether the first chapter is meant to be a sort of prologue, but basically we're following the main character Geo, and she's testifying in this court case against the boyfriend that she had in high school. So 15 years ago, she had this boyfriend who killed her best friend, and she helped him to bury the body, but then never told anyone about it. So now it's 15 years later, and he's just been revealed to be this serial killer that she supposedly didn't know anything about. So she knew that he'd killed someone, but she didn't know that he was a serial killer, supposedly. And in exchange for testifying against him, she's only going to go to prison for 5 years. That's basically the setup for the story. Really intrigued about this because it's been implied that the main character is a bit of an unreliable narrator, and I do tend to like that trope, but also I already, after this first chapter, have a theory on something. So I don't know. I'm in two minds because part of me is really intrigued to carry on reading and find out if the main character is telling the truth. But then also, I don't like it when I read a book and it turns out to be predictable, especially a thriller. So I don't know. I think I'm going to put this above Sleepless. Not sure if this is going to be the one that I pick up, but I definitely do want to read it at some point. I know that the audiobook for this is available on Scribd, so even if I don't read it in this vlog, I might pick up the audiobook. I feel like we have a success though with this one. I would quite happily carry on reading this.
But I can hear raindrops that dancing on the roof. It's like they're calling out, don't lose your youth, 'cause...
Okay, so next up we have The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware, and of all the books that I'm reading for this challenge, this was probably the book that I was most excited for because I have enjoyed every Ruth Ware book that I've read so far, and I think what I like about Ruth Ware's writing is the way that she writes atmosphere, and even in this first chapter I could really feel the atmosphere and I felt like I was there, which is a little bit creepy because obviously thrillers are usually creepy, so it's a little bit unnerving when you feel like you're there and that you've been transported into the book. But yeah, this book is basically following a main character called Hal. I think her name is actually Harriet, but she goes by Hal. And she lives somewhere on the south coast of England, but the book is set in November, so it feels very cold and rainy, and she's in a lot of debt from what I can gather, but she gets this letter from her solicitors saying that she's inherited some money from her grandma, except that her grandparents died 20 years ago, so she's a little bit confused. So it's a really good setup for a thriller because already I have questions and already there's some sort of mystery that you know is going to be solved. And yeah, I think this is it top of the list? I can't decide actually whether I'm more intrigued by this or by Jar of Hearts because I feel like they're very different vibes, but I obviously still have one more book to go, so we'll see how that goes.
Type away inside, oh, make a today just a little less mundane, oh.
So out of all of the books that I knew I was going to be testing for this video, Pretty Girls was the one that I was the most scared of, because first of all, this is huge. It's over 500 pages, so it's pretty long for a thriller anyway, but also Karin Slaughter is the only author that I haven't read from before, so I wasn't sure what I'd think of the writing style in this. And I mean, the writing style isn't bad. I've read the prologue and the first chapter because I felt like the prologue didn't give me enough to really go off. The prologue is basically following the dad of this girl that went missing, and then the first chapter, and I'm assuming the rest of the book, follows the younger sister of this girl, although she's now in her late 30s. I think it said that she's 38 and she's married now, and she's also just been released from prison, or she's just got off probation for something. Basically, she was wearing an electronic tag around her ankle that's just been released, and her husband are out celebrating when something happens. And I don't know whether I should say what happens, considering that it happens in the first chapter. I don't know whether it would be a spoiler, but it's not mentioned on the back of the book, so I'm not going to say what happens, but it's pretty shocking and I wasn't expecting it, so that I guess has intrigued me a little bit. It's interesting because the summary for this sounds very generic and it sounds like a lot of other thrillers that I've read before, but that first chapter was a lot better than I was expecting it to be. So yeah, maybe I'll pick this up some other time. But for now, I think I'm going to be choosing from Jar of Hearts and The Death of Mrs Westaway. I haven't decided yet which of these I want to continue with. So I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break and then I'll come back to you on which one I actually decide to go with. Jar of Hearts looks like the smaller out of the two, but the writing is actually quite small, so I feel like these would both take me a similar amount of time to read, but that's not what we're basing this off. I'm not choosing a book based on how quick it's going to be. I'm choosing a book based on the first chapter, and I liked the first chapter of these equally. So, I don't know which one I'm going to choose. Good morning. So it's now the next day. I did forget to update this vlog last night because I was busy editing and stuff, but I did decide which book I'm going to continue with, and the book that I went for was The Death of Mrs Westaway by Ruth Ware. I almost forgot what it was called then, but I thought that this would be a less risky choice in comparison to Jar of Hearts. I thought there was a better chance of me loving this one. However, I'm now around 50 pages in and I'm still liking it. I still like the atmosphere, but I don't know if I love the main character. I feel like I'm having to suspend disbelief quite a bit because I don't quite understand her actions and the reasons why she's doing what she's doing. Something that I've realised that I don't often like is when a character finds themselves in a really desperate situation and there's only one way for them to get out of that situation. I find it really frustrating because in the back of my mind I'm thinking, well, surely there's other options. Surely there's something else that you can do. You don't have to do that. But for the purpose of the story, it does make sense that they're doing that. I don't know if that made sense or if it was just a complete ramble, but the main character's job in this is actually quite interesting. So she lives in Brighton and she works as a fortune teller. She basically reads tarot cards for a living. There was also a few passages near the beginning that were told in diary format, and I think they were written by her mom because the dates were in the 90s, like around a year before she was born. I feel like we're going to have some family secrets revealed in this story, and I mean, I'm still enjoying it. I still really like the atmosphere. I don't know if I said that already. It's been quite a slow build up so far, so I feel like I need to give it a little more time and just wait for the story to develop. Happy Friday. So it is currently nearly 6 o'clock on Friday evening and I'm meant to be leaving the house in exactly 1 minute, but that's not going to happen now. So I'm just going to be late, it's fine. But I wanted to do a quick update on the Death of Mrs Westaway because I'm around a third of the way through this now. I think I'm on around page 120 and I'm still enjoying it, but I feel like not much has really happened yet, or nothing has really happened yet that surprised me. And it's not that this book is predictable, it's just that it's building up really slowly. I do have a few theories on what I think might be going on or what might have happened. I'm really intrigued by the past timeline in this. I think I mentioned that there's letters every so often, or diary entries, not letters. There's diary entries written every so often by this person in the past, and I'm interested to see how those tie into the overall story and what's happening in the present day. There's quite a lot of characters, and so I'm struggling to keep track of everyone and to remember who's who and who's related to who, but I'm having a good time reading it, and it's reading quite quickly even though not a lot has really happened. Hoping that I can finish this over the weekend because I don't really want to carry it over into August, but we will see how it goes. So I am now around halfway through what's it called? The Death of Mrs Westaway. Actually, I'm over halfway through now. I think I'm on page 237 and I'm liking this, but also I feel like this is quite a character driven thriller and I don't really like any of the characters, or there's nothing really that interesting about any of the characters other than the main character, so I've just been a bit bored. It's not like it's terribly written or anything like that, it's just that I don't care about any of the characters and nothing has really happened still. I'm over halfway through and nothing has happened yet. There haven't been any exciting reveals and there hasn't been much action, but I mean, I don't need action in a thriller. Yeah, what I loved about Ruth Ware's other books is that they were very suspenseful and there was a lot of tension, but there just hasn't been any of that in this book so far. I mean, there's been a few moments, but yeah, I think if I was to summarise my thoughts on this so far, it's that I've mostly been bored. I might read some more of this actually this afternoon, but I'm going out this evening for drinks and burgers, which I'm really excited about. Hopefully I can then finish this tomorrow because I just want it done now. I do feel like I've reached a point now where there's gonna be maybe a change of pace and things might finally start to be revealed because the mystery is still intriguing me. I do think I've worked out something, but I'm not sure because I thought that about the last Ruth Ware book that I read and I turned out to be wrong. Hopefully this does end up surprising me. Good afternoon, it is now Sunday and I am feeling really hungover, but I want to try and get through this final clip and wrap up this vlog because I did finish the Death of Mrs Westaway. Why do I keep forgetting what this book is called? I finished this afternoon and I'm gonna give it 3 stars. I thought it was just okay, but also it felt a little underwhelming in the end. I thought the ending had so much potential, but it just kind of fell flat. It's not that I found it predictable, because what I did like actually is that as I was reading this, I had a few different theories as to what I thought was going on. But what was actually going on was just, I don't know, like, yeah, it was just really underwhelming. And I feel like there was other routes that this story could have taken that would have been so much more exciting and so much more shocking. But in the end, this just felt very unmemorable. I feel like I'm going to put this book down and give it back to the library and I'm going to forget everything about it. So yeah, a little disappointed because I was really excited for this. I really liked the first chapter and the way that the atmosphere was being set up, but it just turned out to be a very average mystery thriller. So I am, yeah, going to wrap things up here, like I said, because I'm very, very tired and I'm struggling to, I've completely forgot what I was just saying. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you did make it this far, let me know in the comments if you've read this book and what you thought of it. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Bye.